SpaceX moves Starship to launch site, and liftoff could be just days away. This either works and will be a sight to behold, or it blows up, which most definitely will be a sight to behold. In any case, much to look forward to. Though I'm firmly in the hope it works camp.
Sorry, I'm out of the loop. Don't really understand what this is. Why would it blow up?
It's a rocket, so there is always a non-zero risk of explosion. This one is also a new, not yet launched rocket, making it extra non-zero chance of explosion.
A rocket is basically a controlled explosion, and when you stop controlling it, explosion is likely.
Ah yes, just like fossil-fueled cars, but on a different scale.
No. This is external combustion of cryogenic fuels at low pressures. There is no crossover beyond the fact that both involve rapid oxidation.
I'm not aware of a single type of orbital rocket reaching orbit successfully on first attempt. Not all of them blew up, but many did.
The best thing about Starship test is that Elon will hopefully shut up about Twitter and focus on the important things instead of garbage.
You do want to blow up, not deliberately though, this thing once though. If no prototype ever blows up before you start going into production, you never know some pieces of information you gotten from monitoring the failure process.
Always curious what sort of monitoring is used here. Pressure valves, temperature. Could we assume there's ultra-high FPS cameras at every useful vantage point? Would there be any vantage point you could put a camera or other sensor that wouldn't get destroyed in a catastrophic unplanned disassembly?
A thing I find mind-blowing is that if this concept succeeds, that I and everyone reading this will be able to afford to go to low Earth orbit on a relatively modest salary within the next 20 years, conservatively. This feels like quite a difficult reality to internalize, given we all grew up seeing only a select few exceptional people, with the stars aligning in their career, be able to do that.
Long before heading to orbit, I'm excited to just get a front row seat for the launch of a fully loaded Starship. Apparently, being in the NASA guest stands for a Saturn V launch was mind-blowing, and this would be double that. Hopefully, SpaceX will set up some kind of excursion package where you get a Starbase tour, a primo front row seat to a launch, and a limited edition t-shirt. Forget Taylor Swift tickets for $1,000 when Starship can literally rock my world.
I wonder if people in general are fit for the G-forces they're subjected to when launching into space. I think astronauts usually go through very rigorous testing and training. And I'm not sure that is something we can engineer ourselves out of.
You can absolutely use engineering to limit the G-forces. It's just a matter of throttling back the engines near the end of a stage, and/or staging sooner. For example, Gemini peaked at 6.4 grams, Apollo peaked at 4 grams, and the Space Shuttle peaked at 3 grams. 3 grams is low enough that most humans shouldn't black out, even without training. I'll also point out that professional astronauts are expected to remain functional for the entire ascent, including emergencies, where G-forces might peak much higher, which is not required for passengers.
Astronauts also need to be able to survive high-G reentries. Apollo reached 7 GS on reentry, and abort modes, which can be very high acceleration indeed.
If William Shatner can do it in his 80s, I'm pretty sure that a substantial fraction of the population can do it. Don't get me wrong, Shatner has worked hard to keep himself in shape. And he didn't get to orbit. But if you keep in shape, and are rich or famous, it may be an option.
Is this a generally agreed upon fact? I'm not sure I buy it, but I'm interested to see a defense of it.
The number Musk is targeting is $10 kg to orbit. With all supplies, it means under $10,000 person for a week in orbit.
Is that target $10 kg to orbit and back? I imagine the price of getting mass back down from orbit would bump your cost up a bit, right?
The Starship upper stage has to come back down anyway, so I don't see why you'd need to double the cost.
If you believe a single word Musk has to say, I have 1,000 bridges I'd like to sell you.
Cars are starting to have a sticker price over $50,000, and most people born today will never be able to afford to own a home in the US. I don't think going to fake space for a minute is really going to be interesting by the end of the decade.
I don't think going to fake space for a minute is really going to be interesting by the end of the decade. Not sure what you're referring to as fake here. Leo, is the ISS fake space. If Starship fully succeeds, it should make trips to and from the Moon and Mars.
It does feel like we may be entering an era that is more akin to the way I remember the 1970s being. White label, beer anyone.
After it launches, the Super Heavy rocket will fly from SpaceX's Starbase launch site eastward, over the Gulf of Mexico. For this test, the booster will not attempt a landing. After stage separation, the Starship upper vehicle is intended to reach orbital velocity before attempting a re-entry into Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. If all goes well, it will make a controlled descent and landing into the ocean just north of the Hawaiian Islands. A shame we won't get to see the booster land. And it sounds like they aren't trying to capture the upper stage either, unless they have a really big drone ship.
Lots of speculation that SpaceX will likely try to soft land the booster in the ocean, just like they did with Falcon 9 first stage, the first handful of times they were trying to land it, or more accurately, learn how to land it. Possibly similar with the upper stage too, just so they can practice and learn.
I think the upper stage they might use lacks the control fins necessary for their landing maneuver.
The upper stage uses the belly flop maneuver, and it has the fins for that. So they could go through the whole process as far as the vehicle is concerned.
SpaceX has one upper stage that they built without those fins. I was under the impression it might be used for the first flight, but someone else clarified that one is expected to fly another time, and the first flight is expected to use a normal ship capable of belly flop.
Yeah, there is some speculation on the no-fin Starship. Either it's a prototype for the NASA Moon Starship, which would need no fins as it's never going to be in the atmosphere again, or it will be a disposable one to deliver the first set of V2 Starlink satellites to orbit, with a better chance of success and payload, as it would have the weight of all that stuff.
Upper stage has more control ability than the Falcon 9. The belly flop testing proved this. They'll be able to bring it down for a controlled soft touchdown in the ocean.
How is SpaceX able to undertake such incredible projects when established agencies such as NASA cannot? I am awestruck. I feel so small compared to people who are able to accomplish extraordinary things.
People need to make sure to maintain their expectations. This launch is not a failure if the rocket blows up soon after takeoff. They have an assembly facility built to build these vehicles quicker and quicker, and every new vehicle is modified from the last. The only thing that would be a failure is if it blows up on near the pad and damages the facilities they've built over the last 2 years or so. That would put another delay in the testing regime. This rocket is significantly more slapped together than past rockets and has been designed in a way to minimize cost as much as possible. It would be extremely surprising, in fact, for this flight to be a complete success.
We're truly on the cusp of a civilizational metamorphosis.
The trillion-dollar question is, does humanity colonize space in time to escape the coming AI apocalypse?
AI would likely be a first-class participant or citizen in any early human colony in space. Our perception of risk to civilization changes significantly for off-world events. Just like the plan to build nuclear reactors on the moon, the threat from AI isn't deemed serious if the plan is to have AI bots on another celestial body. If that were to play out, that would mean the demand for building the AI ecosystem would only increase, and even if it were for off-world deployment, it would still disrupt industries and economies on Earth.
Candidate measurements of a civilization's distance from the Great Filter. Energy yield of weapons. Ratio of their AI's IQ to theirs. Cost mass to orbit. Toto. Calibrate after the Great Filter.
AIs or superintelligence wiping out their creators is not a great filter, at least in the context of the Fermi paradox, unless you are making the claim that all said AIs will then shut down and not attempt to use the rest of the galaxy universe for resources.
Maybe the ES that destroyed civilizations were just misaligned and didn't desire to survive after the achievement of their goal. Maybe all around the universe, millions of ES have just killed everyone and stopped their execution with the return message, "World peace achieved."
It's a lot easier for me to believe maybe there's an intelligence where everyone just agrees. Like maybe they have full knowledge and things just are.
This has been my biggest gripe with all this Great Filter and alien talk. It always seems people personify whatever intelligent beings are out there with human characteristics. Why is it that they have to war? Why is it they have to have economies? Why is it they have to do anything we do here? It never made sense to me.
I kinda get the first two, but why the third? How does further improvements on cost mass to orbit brings us closer to our doom in your opinion?
Because additional grams in orbit are equivalent to additional joules of energy released as weaponry, e.g. dropping rocks. I fear that our ability to use space to destroy ourselves will come before we can use it to launch a diaspora.
Assuming the filter is ahead of us and not behind us.
Calling a rocket that will barely see interplanetary travel Starship is a bit like calling a space shuttle that will never see space Enterprise.
It's literally designed to ferry people back and forth from Mars. Just because it can also launch satellites, it doesn't stop it being an interplanetary vehicle.
It's clearly not seaworthy, yet they call it a ship. What a farce. I want my money back.